Hi guys, today's video is going to be about Bob Paris. Now, Bob Paris was a professional bodybuilder through the mid 80s until the early 1990s. I recall at the time that Paris was featuring in magazines even before he became a pro. This was in part because of his exceptional physique, but I'm sure his model good looks did him no harm at all either. Now, Paris was like an upgraded version of the legendary Steve Reeves. He was known for his extremely aesthetic physique, and some have labelled him as the most aesthetic bodybuilder ever. And it's hard to argue that point, as he had a very balanced, proportionate, well-developed and flowing physique. His posing was also really artistic, and many of his signature poses are synonymous with just him, really. Contest history. After a very impressive amateur career, Paris went on to his first pro show, which was the 1984 Mr. Olympia, where he placed a very credible 7th place. Now, this ended up being his highest place ever at the Mr. Olympia, and he was arguably in his best shape ever. His best places as a professional were mostly at the Grand Prix shows, where he picked up a number of 3rd places and maybe even a 2nd, depending on where you look. His placings from the 1990s onwards were fairly poor, and there may be reasons for that, which I'll touch on later. Now, Physique Critique. I recently did a video on Lee Labrada, and this one will go along similar lines, as both Labrada and Paris had almost flawless physiques, but I'll do it anyway. Paris's legs, they were very good. Depending on the contest, his quads were full, had nice separation, good outer sweep. His calves were really full and proportionate to his quads. In some poses, I actually felt his legs were slightly more impressive than his upper body. But look, I'm nitpicking here, so it's marginal if that. And in that era, I rarely comment on the legs of the bodybuilders from the rear, because the diced glutes and hammies were very few and far between. His abs were really pleasing to look at, and they were really well detailed. He had that really envied 6-pack, really brick-like. His biceps were not particularly peaked, but they were really full, and they really looked good in the poses with extended arms. His triceps as well, they weren't particularly huge, but they were really balanced and fit in well with the size and shape of his bicep. Paris's chest was really well developed from top to bottom, and it tied in really nicely with his front delts. There is a couple of areas where I think Paris could have possibly improved slightly, which were his shoulders and back. Now, he had a naturally wide shoulder structure, and he looked really good relaxed, but I felt that sometimes his shoulders could have done with more thickness, as when he posed them, they sort of flattened out a bit. And didn't look as impressive. His back had good detail, and the width wasn't too bad really, but he could have done with more back thickness, and I reckon he could have improved both these body parts without affecting his overall symmetry or balance. But it's the nature of these critiques to actually be critical and pick apart little things and find flaws, but if you look at his physique as a whole, there's just pretty much nothing to say wrong about it. But he was so good. Now, I did consider that his conditioning was occasionally inconsistent. At best, he was on par with the norm for the era, but sometimes a little watery. I really would have liked to see this guy come in super diced one time and see what he could have done. And I really think he could have achieved some pro wins and get them under his belt. Now, his personal life. Now, this isn't something I would normally comment on with regards to what I do in my videos, but in Paris's case, I think there's relevance to his bodybuilding career. Now, Paris is a gay man. in 1989, his sexuality was made public in Iron Man magazine. Now, from what I know now, Paris has been very open about his sexuality all along, but a lot of the publications were keeping it secret in order to protect him. And it would seem that that was probably would have been a wise thing at the time. Now, this is a time before social media and the internet, so information only came through the bodybuilding magazine, so I only became aware of it when Iron Man published it. Now, this was a less than enlightened age, you could say, so I recall being really impressed that magazines were so supportive, and he even got some covers with his partner at the time on those magazines. Now, it seems that the support, though, wasn't universal, and he ended up losing about 80% of his endorsements for bodybuilding. Now, it's apparent that Paris was the first professional athlete that was outed as gay while still being competitive. So he's a bit of a pioneer, if you like. Now, he competed several times after being made public that he was gay, but it didn't make much impact. He was about 6 foot tall and competed around 220 to 230, so he wasn't one of the super large guys out there. And I'm hoping that his drift in placings was due to the transition of the freaky bodybuilders, or just that his physique he presented wasn't particularly good in those shows, and it wasn't a reflection on his sexual preference. Whatever the reason, though, Paris last competed in 1992. I don't want to make this all about his sexuality, though, because my videos are about the physique, but I just wanted to include that there because I felt that was relevant to possibly a shortened career. We'll never know, I suppose. Look, I'll finish by saying that I remember Paris for the perfection of his physique in what I consider was the golden age of bodybuilding for me. That's all I've got, guys. Any comments? Put them in there, let us know. Okay, see ya.